can you share why audience have to start a podcasting, why it is very powerful, and what is the potential of podcasting in the upcoming years, especially in 2020 and in upcoming years?
I think
Hi guys, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Warrior Show. This is where we interview entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants who are making an amazing impact in their business and in their customers' life. And in this amazing series of interviews, today we have a super awesome guest with us. He is the co-founder of WYN Studio. He is India's top podcast mentor and India's leading podcaster with over 1 million downloads on his podcast. He hosts a podcast called The Inspiring Talk, one of the top self-help podcasts in India. It was a finalist for Asia's best podcast at Asia Podcast Summit. He did an interview with a lot of top names in the industry like best-selling authors, entrepreneurs, and celebrities. He is a podcast coach and consultant. So without further ado, let's welcome Bijay Gautam on the stage. Hi Bijay.
Hi, Nilesh. Thank you so much for that lovely intro. Happy to be here this morning.
It's really glad to have you on the stage. And how are you feeling about being interviewed by other?
It's always interesting because usually I'm the one interviewing people. I'm the one having conversations with people, but it's always fun to be on the other side and share my story. So it's interesting. Thank you
Yes,
for inviting me.
it's really awesome and really glad to have you on the stage. Vijay, you are coming from a pharma background and turned into a podcaster and are also known as India's top podcast mentor. So could you tell us a little bit about your backstory, like how all it started?
Yeah. So 2017, I was working at one of the leading pharma companies in the country as a research scientist, and 1.5 years into that job, I started realizing that hey, this is not what I wanted to do with my life. I started getting more and more frustrated at the job. So every single morning, I used to dread to go to the work, and also when I was at work, I was not satisfied with what I was doing internally. I was feeling that hey, you know what? This is really not what I want to do with my life. And when that happened, I asked myself, hey, if you don't want to be a research scientist, then what do you want to do? And the answer that came from within was, I don't know. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to the feeling that where you don't like what you're doing, also at the same time, you have no answer of what you want to do next in your life. And when I was at that stage, luckily for me, I was exposed to this whole world of personal transformation. I was reading a lot of self-help books, watching TED Talks, going out and meeting people, and reading magazines and so on and so forth. So I knew that there are some interesting people doing amazing stuff. I thought, hey, it would be really interesting to have conversations with people and ask them how did they figure out what they wanted to do in their life, right? So the whole idea of doing the podcast was to figure out my own life, and maybe in those conversations I will find the blueprint that I was looking at. So I felt, hey, you know what? It would be interesting to have conversations with them and ask all the questions that I have that I wanted to ask people. And that's how the whole idea of podcast came into existence. And I started having conversations with people, started sharing it out with the world, and people seemed to connect with it because they felt that, hey, you know what? We had the similar questions about, life, and we were thinking of the same things. And I was asking on their behalf, pretty much like how you are doing, how you are sharing the stories of people with others, right? And when I started doing that, that really started picking up, and I started enjoying that a lot. And that's when I felt that, hey, you know what, I think I've found my blueprint. I think this is what I want to do with my life. I think this is so much fun, and also I get to learn so much. And even today, after so many years of doing this, I have those butterflies on my belly when I'm interviewing someone, because I know that there's so much that I'm going to learn from every single person that I bring on the conversation. And the way I look at it even today is, it's a way for me to scratch my own back, meaning I'm hungry for knowledge. I'm curious as a person, so I get curious about a lot of things, and I want to quench my curiosity thirst. And whenever I'm excited about a topic, I'll say that, this is really interesting. So, who is the best person out there who can try and help me understand this concept? So, I'll reach out to them and I'll bring them on my podcast, right? If I want to understand about meditation, I'll go and get the best person I can and talk about meditation. If I want to understand about functional nutrition, I'll go and find somebody who can talk about it, right? So, if I want to understand about compassion, or if I want to understand about anything, that, so my podcast is in personal transformation, anything that can help you make your life, career, business, relationship better. I bring those kind of conversations on the podcast, right? So if I want to understand relationships better, I'll find the relationship expert and get them to share everything that they know about relationship in that 60 minutes, 45, 60-minute conversation that I have with them. So from that perspective, it never feels that, oh, you know what, I have to create a podcast or any of that, which a lot of people might feel that is work. But for me, it's just that, hey, you know what, I'm getting to learn about this topic today. Let's go ahead and get into that conversation, and let's learn a few things, and while doing so, also share it with the people. So that's pretty much how I look at it, and that's how I started doing the podcast. And 1.5 years into that, I kind of felt that, hey, you know what, I think I can make a career out of this. So I quit my job and started, doing podcast full time. And 2019 is when we started WYN Studio, the company that I run today.
This is completely awesome journey. And when you mention that I have a curiosity to learn, and that is what this podcast all help us. This particular concept I read in 2020 when I started into this journey, and this is concept I read in .com Secret by Russell Brunson,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That become a reporter. If you are not somebody and but you want to learn something, just start your podcast, your interview show, and play a role of reporter, and that's where you are also doing the same. So really amazing and inspiring journey of yours. Thank you so much for sharing this. You are a
Yes.
podcast coach as well. You are podcast mentor, and you are doing it from 2017, and right now we are into 2023. So can you share why audience have to start the podcasting, why it is very powerful, and what is the potential of podcasting in the upcoming years, especially in 2020 and in upcoming years?
I think podcast primarily is an audio medium now. The lines of podcast being audio, just audio medium, and being a video medium, the line are getting more, are getting blurry. But when you think about it, podcast as an audio medium, it allows you to consume content when you are doing something else. You can't watch something when you are driving or cooking or cleaning or doing something else, but you can listen to it. And that's why podcast is a medium that you can take wherever you go. That's the first part, right? And the second part of it is, if you look at the kind of retention on any of the videos, you will see that if any of the video has got anything above 10%, that's like a really good retention rate in a video, right? But when you think about in a podcast, you see retention like 50%, 60%, 70% retention, meaning 100 people who started listening to that podcast, 60, 70, 80 people ended up listening it till the end. While if 10 people watches your video till the end, then that's like a massive benchmark that you have there. And also, podcast is a medium for the people who want to create content. It requires, it doesn't require a lot of tools and equipment and so on and so forth. You pretty much can have your microphone, and you are good to go. Having said that, it doesn't mean that anybody who can buy a microphone and talk in front of it can be a great podcaster. You need to definitely back that up with a great content and great concept of your content, right? What is the unique thing that you are bringing on the table? Now, having said all of that, and also you see a lot of people who are in video space getting into podcasting. The reason is, while you can get someone's attention using video, but if you want to retain someone's attention, then audio is your medium, right? So that helps you build trust with your audience. Now, while there could be a million people who just watched your 15-second reel for 3 seconds and they just moved on because they were swiping up and down and left and right, but here are are people who are listening to you for 30 minutes. And if they are listening to you on a regular basis every single week, then imagine the amount of trust that they have on you. Imagine the credibility that you are building on your audience, and that forms a very, very strong bond with the audience, right? Now, from the growth perspective, we have seen some really massive growth. When I started podcast 2017, like you said, um, I could pretty much count the number of people who are doing podcasts on my hands, right? I could quite literally count the number of people who are doing the podcast, and everybody knew everybody. This, the industry was so small. There were very few people listening to podcasts. But now, if you look at today, you see that Bollywood is getting into podcasting. You see that it's almost impossible for you to go to any of the music streaming apps like JioSaavn or Ghana or Spotify or any of these apps and not know what a podcast is, because you see it on the face that they're pushing podcast heavily. Like I said, Bollywood is getting into podcasting. You see all the creators are jumping into the podcasting bandwagon. And when I started in 2017, there were pretty much 25 million podcast listeners, and last year 2022 there were 2021, actually there were almost 100 million podcast listeners. That number has kind of quadrupled. And it is expected that this year the number is going to go somewhere between 200 million, right? So 150 to 200 million listeners. So from that perspective, the number of people who are listening to podcast is growing. And also the other thing that we need to understand is India is a country where people have grown up listening to stories and so on and so forth. So from that perspective, we have seen a lot of people consuming this story based podcast, fiction, and so on and so forth. And platforms like Kuku, they do have almost a million people who are subscribers and so on and so forth. Now, all of this is telling us that audio as a medium has got a huge opportunity and scope in India. But I think the biggest opportunity in 2023, and at least in the next couple of years, is going to lie for the people who create content in local languages, right? So we have seen that happen already in Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, and Bangla, and so on and so forth. So the people who are creating content on those languages and who create with a certain quality of content and certain production value, they are definitely going to win in the longer run, because there's not enough supply of that kind of content in the regional space. So that is where I think the biggest wins are going to come from. Next podcast stars in India are going to come from the regional space, which is something that we have already started seeing happen, right? But we'll see that getting amplified more. And also the simple, normal interview conversation where just two people having conversation, it's that market is bit saturated. Then we'll start seeing a lot of creative things that will start happening, right? We'll see more and more people take that extra effort in creating narrative style podcasts like that happen, like people do in the US, right? Like the likes of shows that Gimlet media produces, whether that's startup, we'll see like the serial in the storytelling and so on and so forth. So it's going to be so the competition is getting harder, which means we'll see more and more people taking that extra effort in making the show better and better, which I think is a really good thing for the content, and for the audience as well, because now audience do have a taste for great shows, and we'll see that creator living up to that expectation by going that extra mile and really working hard at those. So yeah.
Awesome. In the comment section, we have Rutu who is mentioning that she is doing in her vernacular language, which is Gujarati. So definitely, I'm also following a lot of podcasts from our own native language, which is great, and it is booming like crazy. In English, it is not that much fast growth, but if you start in vernacular, it grows like crazy. And you mentioned, I also read this one thing on Forbes as well, the numbers that you mentioned, that it is somewhere around 220 plus million or something people are coming and starting their podcast and all. So how someone who is starting a podcast, how they are stand out unique? You already mentioned like storytelling, different ways of stories and fictionals and all, but any specific different criterias you have in your mind that help somebody who is starting his or her podcast is standing out unique?
I think I'll start by quoting this data, which is a little older data, but and then I'll give why that's the scenario. So there was this data that came out around last year or last year 2021, where they were. It showed this pyramid where there were almost 2 million podcasts that were started globally, and out of 2 million podcasts that started globally, 30% podcasters just released one episode and they never came back for their second episode. And the number of people that actually released more than 10 episode was, out of those 20 lakh people, only some 7 lakh people released more than 10 episodes. That means 20 lakh people started the podcast because it's easy, and it's anyone can become a podcaster. You can record it and hit publish, and boom, you are a podcaster. You can update your LinkedIn and Instagram bio as a podcaster. But out of 20 lakh people who started podcast, only 7 lakh people released 10 episodes. And if you ask, like, out of those 7 lakh people, how many people are actually consistently doing it even today? If you look back, when I'm saying actively doing, let's say, even if they have released at least one episode in the past 90 days, then how many people would that be? Then you would be surprised to know that the number is not more than 2 to 3 lakhs. And that still is an optimistic number. Out of 20 lakh people who published podcast, only 10% of them, right? 2 to 3 lakh, 10 to 15% of them are actively creating podcasts on a regular basis, which means just by being consistent, you are on top 10%. Now, but there is a reason why these people are not consistent. Why is it that people are giving up on the podcasting? Couple of reasons, right? Number one, that I always tell people is, why do you even want to start a podcast? What is your reason for starting the podcast? When I was sharing my story, I told you that, hey, you know what? I wanted to learn from these people, and I want to quench my curiosity thirst, right? And that's something that drives me even today. Nothing else, right? Everything else, while I'm not, while I monetize my podcast, while I bring on sponsors, while I do a lot of different things, but the core of it still remains same, which is that what drives me is that stronger why. And consistency comes from having the clarity of why. And for you and I to be successful in anything that we do in our life, we need to be consistent. And that's the first one, right? So do it for the right reason. Know why are you doing it, and what is it that drives you. Like, maybe you want to build a stronger personal brand, or maybe you are passionate about the topic that you want to go and talk to people, right? You want to learn about that topic and become a pro at it. Whatever your reason is, you need to do it for the right reason. That's the first one. And now the second reason is, you need to understand who my audience is and what they need. And this is the journey that you do the self reflection every few months. Like, for example, even though I started my podcast way back in 2017, now I have to keep on asking myself that, hey, the objective that I had in 2017, is it still relevant today? Or the topics that I am doing on my podcast, is it still relevant today? What different can I do? What new can I do? Now, for the past few months, I have taken a bit different direction for my own podcast. Now, from just covering the journeys, now my podcast is becoming more of a personal transformation hardcore podcast, where we are talking about a lot of personal transformation topics, where you come and learn about a topic, and you can maybe implement a thing or two and that can really help you transform your life in different areas of your life, right? So you need to find that, and you need to question yourself and, like, hey, who my audience is, what is it that they need, and how can I really really help them, right? So that's the second thing that you need to have clarity of who my audience is. And the third thing is, how am I going to be different and unique? Now, you might wonder that, hey, you know what, I'm an expert in this topic, and I'm going to create a podcast in this topic, right? And I'm going to share this with everyone. Guess what? Every other expert in that domain is thinking of the same exact idea. Then how you are going to differentiate? What is your USP? With USP, I mean unique show proposition. What's your unique show proposition? How you are going to differentiate yourself from all the other people, right? That could be, like I said earlier, it could be a different storytelling, it could be a different production value, it could be your own story, your own experience, it could be the way you've targeted your audience. There could be n number of things that you can look at to make your show unique and different. And I think these are the three things that you need to have absolute clarity of. Why am I doing it? Who is my audience? And what's the unique thing that I'm bringing on the table? And if you do not have clarity of these three things, it's highly likely that you will give up after a few episodes.
That's insane advices, and you nailed it when you mentioned 20 million people started, but out of that only 2 to 3 lakh are consistent. I can relate with you because 1.5 year ago when I started this podcasting, I'm seeing that there is a 10 to 15 people are doing it. I have no idea about 20 million, but I'm seeing on my Facebook profile that there is a 10 to 15 people are doing the same thing that I'm doing. But right now, there's nobody. They stop doing it and they stop their Facebook profile as well, publishing anything on their Facebook profile. So I can know that yes. And the three things that you share, why, who, and USP is something you have to have clarity. Like if you just start with the money purpose, you are not going to long enough. That is what you mentioned, and really awesome advices. Bijay, you interviewed top celebrities, entrepreneurs, best-selling authors, Vidya Box, billionaire Naveen Jain, and Kailash Kher, a lot of celebrities, a lot of entrepreneurs. How did you manage to invite this such high-level people on your show, on your podcast?
Nilesh, a lot of people think that, hey, you know what, I'm going to write an email and invite them on my podcast and
Yeah.
they will just say yes. But guess what? There are hundreds of people who reach out to them on a regular basis saying that, hey, you know what, I want to interview you. And their inbox in and their DMs are flooded with those kind of requests. And again, here you need to be unique, you need to be different with your approach, right? If you do what everyone else is doing, you will get what everyone else is getting, which is no, or maybe just get ignored. And you don't want to do that, right? Now for that, I'll give you a very simple practical tip on how you can really go about it, right? So and I want you to participate here, Nilesh. So tell me something. Now let's say you want to reach out to this person who has got 100,000 people who follow them on Instagram, and they make a post on the Instagram. How many people do you think will is gonna double tap and like their post? Just get a wild guess and just throw a number. Just say that if there are 100,000 people who follow these people on the social media, how many people will like the post? How many
Okay,
people?
out of 100,000, I'm seeing a lot of less numbers. Might be, let's take an example of 10,000 people.
Yeah, let's say 10,000 people, right? 10,000 people just double tapped and they moved on, right? So
Yes.
out of those 100,000, how many people will actually leave a comment?
Just 1,000 people.
1,000 people, and that's still a very optimistic number, but let's go ahead with 1,000 people,
Mhm.
right? Out of those
Yes.
1,000 people, how many of the people do you think are actually going to write a meaningful comment? Not like, oh great, or fire emoji and love. If you remove all of that, then how many will actually write a thoughtful comment, or at least more than one sentence, or at least a sentence?
50 to 100.
50 to 100, right? Again, that's still optimistic number, but still go ahead with 50 to 100 people who write that thoughtful comment. Now how many people actually will DM that person and say that, hey, you know, the post, leave that thoughtful comment, and then DM the person and say that, hey, you know what, the post that you just made really resonated with me because I've had the similar experience, and that really made me, you know, this post really made me feel ABC. Thank you for sharing this. How many
Hardly
people
5
do you
to
think?
10.
That's, I don't think, 5 to 10 people do that,
No, I'm
right?
just taking like
Yeah,
50 to
so
100 people
barely
of.
2 to 3 people. Okay, let's
Oh,
say even 5 people out of, now you see, out of 100,000 people, only 5 people will bother to text the person. Now if you do that 3 times, what will happen? Do you think that you are going to be noticed by that person or not? Or when you do that, maybe that person will read for the first time and ignore it. The second time you did it, the person will read and ignore it. Maybe third time, ignore it. Fourth time, you realize that, hey, you know what, Nilesh is such a loyal fan of me. At least he deserves thank you from my side, right? Maybe double tap your DM, or maybe just type thank you, right? And next time you see some really interesting stuff, then now when the person says thank you, the conversation has just, now the person already knows you, and by this time the person must have already checked your profile as well. Let me check who this person is. And that's where the magic lies. If your profile is sorry for my friends, but shitty, and if you want to get the person, it doesn't matter how many people follow you, but how good your profile is, how, what's the kind of content that you post is a reflection of who you are as a person. And if you are putting that kind of shitty content out there and expect people to come on your podcast, it's not going to happen, right? So you need to first show that you are worth it. And if you have done your homework, like earlier when I was just, when I just started my podcast, I had my website, and my website had all the information in it had all the details. And when they came on my website, they realized, this guy is serious about this, and I think it's worth my time to go on his show. So you gotta create that differentiation. I get a lot of request from people who want me to come on the podcast. And when I look at the invitation email, it's pretty much like the template that they paste to 100 people, and then if anybody replies, then that's well and good. So you don't want to do that, right? So once you have started that conversation, then when you next time you see a post and where you think, this is an interesting topic that I think I can explore on my podcast, then just reach out to the person and say that, hey, you know what, this topic looks really really interesting, and by the way, I do this podcast, and I was wondering if you'd be keen on talking more about the post that you just shared, and shed more lights on the inside, on the things that things that you want to talk about on this topic. And then and when you do that, the likelihood, I'm not saying 100%, but likelihood of the person saying yes is way higher than you randomly reaching out to somebody and saying that, hey, you know what, I want you on my podcast. Because everybody loves those super fans, everybody loves those people who are regularly engaging and interacting with them on their post, and you want to be that person first.
I totally. This is something you break down each and every step. Like don't just do a cold outreaching. First, build a connection that actually show that yes, I am someone who is actually making an impact in his or her life, and he is actually getting a result with my content, and
True that.
he's sharing the love, and that's the where the real connection, true relationship is started establishing, right?
True that.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for break down the each and every entire step. This is something that people are going to charge, but you mentioned within share within 5 to 10 minutes with us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So you started your podcast somewhere around 2017, and after 15 months you quit your job, as you mentioned earlier. So to do the podcasting full time. So if you don't mind me sharing, would you mind sharing any number how much revenue you started generating so you are getting a courage to leave your job? So just for people to
Yeah,
give a
sure.
courage.
Without revealing the number, here's what I would say. When I was, working as a research scientist at my job, then I was doing my podcast, and also I was building relationship with a lot of people in the podcasting ecosystem, right? So, and I was in talk with this app called Castbox, which is a podcast listening app. And I got in touch with people at Castbox, asking them to requesting them to feature my show, and see how can I be of help to them, and so on and so forth. And these guys were in on India tour, trying to make podcasters. This is a US based company, but the people who found that company were from China, but it's a US based company. So they were on India tour, meeting different podcasters, having conversation, trying to understand the podcasting ecosystem, and so on and so forth. So I went to meet them, and and when I was having conversation with them and try to understand what is it that you're trying to do here in India, is there any way that I can help you, and so on and so forth. And to cut the long story short, that connection eventually led to me getting the consulting opportunity for the app, right? So I landed that consulting opportunity where I had to work half the time that I was spending at my full-time job, and also I was getting paid double the amount that I was being paid at my full-time job, right? So which means I was drawing double the amount that I was making at my job, doing half the work that I was doing, because I came as a consultant, helping them grow the app and the listeners here in India, and customize the app, and so on and so forth, curate the content for them, right? So when I did that, and I realized that, hey, you know what, now I'm making comfortable amount, now I can easily make that switch. And that's when I started, that's when I made the switch full time. And for anybody who's looking at making that switch, I would say that please do not jump without having an answer to the question that how you're going to make money the first day you quit your job. If you do not have answer to that, at least from my own experience, I would say just don't do that. Have that answer ready, and then only make that switch.
Yeah, that's awesome. And have a clarity. You also have a clarity with your why, like why I have to do it. And that's where you find it that yes, this is what my passion and this is what I have to do. And I know I am going to make it possible. So that's what clarity is required. So just now you talk about monetization and something. So lots of people are not started, try to start, but they don't start just because they think that how it helped me to make money, how it helped me to
Yep.
monetize my skill. Or so, would you like to share how it helps them to make money?
So first thing that I want to start off, and which is going to disappoint a lot of people, is that if your primary objective of looking at starting podcast or looking at doing any form of content for that matter is to make money, then I would say just don't, because you are going to get disappointed.
True.
Because
So true.
people think that, hey, you know what, if I put out 3 reels or 5 videos or 10 episodes of a podcast, I'm going to be a millionaire. Unfortunately, that's not how this works. This will
Yeah.
require years of work, and if you're lucky, then maybe you might start monetizing in 6 months, 1 year, but it will take, you are looking at least 2 3 years before you get substantial traction to your content, right? So I don't want to paint the rosy picture for you here, showing the dream, which is which is something that, oh, what, this is the dreamland, and this is, if I start creating videos, I'll, or start podcast, then I'm going to be a millionaire. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. What you
So
need
true.
to understand is, being in a content space and monetizing is extremely hard. While it might look easy to hear those YouTube creators say that, oh, I made this many lakhs this month, or this much crore in a year, it might look easy, but it's extremely hard for people to make money in content, and we need to understand that. And once you understand that, then the way you think will start changing. Because, oh, if creating content is really hard, then I can probably look at content as a way for me to market my product and service, and I need to have a product and service that kind of backs, that is supported by my content. Now, when I have a content, then when I use my own product and service, at the back of it, then I'm more likely to generate some revenue from that. Now, what I'm trying to say is, you need to understand, do you want to make money from your content, or do you want to make money because of your content? And there's a difference. When I say you want to make money from your content, that means you need to make money from that content, which means maybe ad revenues, or maybe sponsorship deals, and so or your listeners paying to consume that content, right? When I'm saying make money because of your content, is because you have a podcast or a YouTube channel, or a whatever, LinkedIn, or Instagram, whatever channel that you have, and you are consistently creating content and building followers, and because you have created that content, it helped you build the trust, credibility, thought leadership, and your personal brand, which help people to trust in the product and service that you have. And because that made people to trust in the product and service that you have, it's your content is going to make the purchase decision much easier, as opposed to you trying to sell something without having any presence in the form of content. So that is something, if you understand this game in this way, where, okay, I have a content, I have a product, and my content is going to help me sell the product, and I'm going to create the content not because I want to make money from the content, but I want to use content as a strategy to sell my product and service, then you are thinking in the right direction. At least that's been my experience, and that's how I have seen, a lot of people make really good use of the content without being, without saying that, hey, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast and start make money. I think that's the wrong way to think about content.
Yeah, that is not true. Same with me, like 1.5 year ago when I started, my main reason, my main purpose was to, at that time, my communication was not that much good, right? So I thought it helps me to grow my communication. It helps me to talk with people,
True.
and I get to learn what they are thinking, how they are thinking. My main
Absolutely.
perspective was not to make money. So that's the main clarity. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
And like you said, right? And that's such a great reason for you to start a podcast,
yes.
or this series where, you know what, I'm not, and I can relate with that, because when I started my podcast, quite literally, I would write down 10 questions and I read one question after another. And I would read the question, the guest would answer. I would read another one, the guest would answer. And
Yes.
now today, after doing so many episodes, I can pretty much walk into any room and then
Mm.
just get into conversation and still do a decent episode. And I don't think that would have been possible if I didn't force myself to be in front of microphone week after week.
Yeah, so true. So true. After like recently, I also have hit 50 episodes, so I'm getting
Awesome.
a confidence, little bit confidence. Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
things are going good. Yeah. Thank you for sharing and break down each and every step. There are see, there are a lot of people who are famous, so it is easy to know that he can be my guest. But in many industries, there are people who are making an impact but are known not known well, right? So how do people find out their dream guest in any industry? Like,
There are a bunch of places where you can go, right? So one is like go to simple YouTube, or go to any other podcasts, or you just go to Amazon and look for people who have written books on the topic that you want to interview them. Or my way is I just be open. Whenever I'm consuming any content, whenever I'm on internet, I'm just open to the idea that, hey, you know what, anybody that I come across on internet can be my potential guest. And if I come across something interesting, then I immediately just keep them on my wish list and start reaching out to them or start engaging with them, whatever that is, right? So that's pretty much how you find them, right? And also the other way, the easiest way to do it is ask your existing previous guests, to make an introduction to one person. That's it, right? Just ask your previous guest to make one person, like, hey, can you please introduce me to at least one person in your network who can be guest on my podcast. And your guests network, like every time I do that, my guests give me 2 3 names, and and I'm always spoiled with choices on whom I want to bring on the podcast. And another thing is, you want to reach out to a lot of these PR agencies. A lot of these PR agencies reach out to people who do have platform where they want either their clients, who usually are authors or entrepreneurs and so on and so forth. So they want these people to be interviewed, so they reach out and say that, hey, would you like to interview this person? And reach out to them, hey, I do have a podcast, and or a YouTube channel, or whatever that is, and I if you have any clients that you want me to interview, do let me know, and just reach out to them.
so true, and it helps us to get bunch of guests on the podcast. That's super.
True.
Yeah, awesome. That is something I also use to get a lot of guests for my podcast. Is there any specific challenge in your journey right now? Like you are into podcasting from more than 5 years. So before starting any podcast, any interview, or doing anything, any specific challenge you have right now?
I don't, I don't think there's any challenge per se, but it's more exciting because my podcast has primarily been the audio podcast for the past 4.5 years. And somewhere around mid of last year in 2022, we decided to launch the video version of the podcast so that we can maximize the reach in the other mediums like Instagram and YouTube and so on and so forth. So for me, more than challenge, it's getting more exciting because we are doing bunch of stuff with it. And we are working a lot around the reels and so on and so forth, and that's what we are doing at Wine as well. So we are focusing a lot on videos as well, in addition to the podcast. It's not because, oh, now why are you now getting into video. It's because we want to maximize the reach of the same content. If I'm recording the same content, and if I'm getting my guests time for an hour, then I want to squeeze the juice out of that content. I want to break it down and put it into as many platforms as possible, right? I'll take out the reel and put it on Instagram. I'll write a nice summary and put it as a LinkedIn article. And there's so much that you can do with the same piece of content. So I think that's exciting. And I don't think that anything that I see as a challenge right now in the entire process. Maybe also because I've been doing this for a while, and we do have process and systems in place. But when I started, there were definitely a lot of challenges, right?
Yeah.
The biggest one would be my own self doubt, right? I always felt that, hey, you know what? Am I even making any difference? Is it even worth it? And so on and so forth. So there's so much doubt that one goes through. But with time, I got to overcome those, and I don't think there's any challenge per se.
Loved it. And when you just mentioned that when I just started out, my own limiting belief. So I'm relating with you because my own limiting belief many times give me an that did he said yes to be on your podcast or not? But this is one quote always come in my mind. Like if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So I
Absolutely.
just asked whether yes or no. It's all depends. So thank you for
Bang
sharing.
on.
Yeah. So we have few questions. Are you not running out of time? Few questions from
Yeah, yeah,
audience.
sure, we can do that.
Awesome. So there is a one question by Sovik. Will interview show podcast still dominate in 2023?
I think Sobik, the interview podcast in just the form of two people just getting in front of microphone and just talking about anything and everything. I think people are tired of that. But the people who do that interview and then cut it down and bring it really short and do a really nice tight episode, then that will still continue to do so. But like conversations where people talk about anything and everything, and oh, you know what, you are my friend, come, we just have a conversation and we'll do a podcast. I think people are tired of that. Like, why would they want to? So I think the question that you got to ask yourself, like, if somebody is giving their 50 minutes, 60 minutes to you, what is the value that they're getting out of the conversation? And if you think there's not a lot of value, then if you so the simple way to look at this is ask yourself, do if I were a listener, do I want to listen to something like this? If the answer to that is hell yes, then go for it. If not, then you need to rethink your podcast idea.
Awesome. Thank you for and the same question. Second is the same question like monetization. So you already answered it. Thank you and really appreciate you, Vijay, for coming on the show. It's really nice to have you. Where do people can find you?
I'm on Instagram or wherever you want to find me. I'm at the rate Bijay Speaks, BIJAYSPEAKS. So you can find me anywhere by just the same thing. It's same everywhere. It's Bijay Speaks.
Thanks a lot. Before we wrap up the show, any three advice would you like to give to upcoming podcaster or who are planning to start it?
I think I already shared those three things
Hmm.
in somewhere in the conversation. But I think I would say just also don't overthink a lot. A lot of people, I would say, delay the entire process because they are perfectionists. Just understand that there's nothing called as perfect. And one of the examples that I give is even the iPhone 14 is not perfect, and Apple is never going to come to us and say that this is the last phone ever, because hum iske upar we can't think of anything better that we can do on this phone. So there's always room for improvement in even the perfect product that you think there is. So don't put that pressure of being perfect. And also, some people think that, hey, you know what, but BJ, my voice is not good, can I do a podcast? I would say people are not there to listen to your voice. They would listen to a musician or singer if they want to listen to their voice. They are there to listen to your message, and if you have a great message to share with the world, then the thought that I don't have a great voice should not stop you from sharing your message with the world, right? I think those would be like two really quick things. So just don't chase perfection, and just understand that you can't get better at something that you don't start.
Loved it. Thank you so much for nailing it down with mic drop values in the show. And thank you so much. Thanks a lot, everybody. I'll be joining you with another episode on the Entrepreneurs Warrior Show. Till then, have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you, everybody.